It's Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for Wrestling Tonight, live from the No Sale Studios. I'm the ace of the Tavern, Stephen Acefield, joined, as always, Monday, the one bad Chad. What's up, Chad?
Not much, man. Another week, some great wrestling news to talk about. You know, when I hear that intro song kick in, it's like, it's time. It gets me fired up. I'm ready for the show. I can't wait to talk about the topics we got on hand.
Yeah, I agree, man. The topics are going to be tied in with the ones we talked about last week, but we have a variation, a potpourri, if you will, of just different things to talk about. And that's what wrestling will do for you. A lot of different things going on in the wrestling world.
Absolutely. Always something to talk about. And guys, like if you're listening right now, I know this is technically our third episode, but we did a special. Thanks for tuning into that special. It did really good. Breaking down the WWE sale. And like we said in that video, I'm sure this will be a topic moving forward as things come out, but a little different thing this week. You might just be listening to us because now Wrestling Tonight is dropping every Tuesday morning on the Turnbuckle Tavern's Apple and Spotify feed. You'll get to hear me and Ace in your ear holes. If you aren't privy to be able to sit down and watch us on YouTube, you can now listen to us. So appreciate you guys tuning in the audio version. And look, if you guys love the show, if you like what me and Ace are doing, please go to the review on Apple and Spotify. If you feel we deserve it, give us a 5-star. Tell us you're listening to Wrestling Tonight. And if it's a bad review, keep that shit to yourself. You know, we don't need low ratings bringing the show down. So yeah.
But man, let's get into the big three, man. We only got a limited amount of time here. Let's get into the first big story. What do you think about that?
Let's do it. Let's go.
Man, I feel like we're a little bit biased here because of us being, big fans of AEW, and they could have been interchangeable. I think number 2 is probably everybody else's number 1, but we're going to go with a variation of conversations. Adam Cole returning after a shoulder injury and 2 back-to-back concussions, the most notable one being at Forbidden Door, that really scary incident in that triple threat fatal 4-way match where they had to end it early. We saw him surprise entrance on Dynamite. Nobody knew it was happening. Really cool moment. One of those moments that will live for a long time. I mean, shocking moments don't happen often in wrestling, and I was happy to see it.
Oh, were you expecting him back, Ace? Because I wasn't.
Not specifically on this Dynamite at all. We've been waiting for updates, and I think the last update in the Wrestling Observer was that he was still battling the headaches, and Dave Meltzer was pretty grim about his in-ring return. And if he's wasn't sure, that means it was pretty tight-lipped for everybody. And, obviously Britt is working within the company, so they kept it pretty hush, and that's a good thing because it created this awesome moment, and he got the reaction he deserved.
Yeah, I'm kind of like with you a little bit. I didn't expect him on this show. I believe that day or the day prior, he was actually brought up by Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer. I think Dave asked, have you heard anything about Adam Cole? And they hadn't heard anything. And I believe they made the comment, it's been quiet with Adam Cole for a while. So that could be really, really bad news or really, really good news. We weren't sure how bad those back-to-back concussions were. Sometimes that ends careers. And so when he showed up, I was pleasantly surprised. And I loved how the first half, it was that classic good news, bad news promo where it's like, I've got some good news, I've got some bad news. Instantly fans' minds were going to Daniel Bryan and WWE, the retirement speech, Edge giving the retirement speech. Everyone's hoping, please God, don't retire. We were really left in the mystery of it, like wondering what he was going to say. He kicks it off the first half, talking about his injuries, talking about how much he struggled with it. And I really enjoyed hearing it. It didn't feel like a promo in that first half. It really felt like he was just pouring his heart out to us.
Yeah, I mean, how could he not? He dealt with real life injuries that he questioned his career and his everyday life. And that has to be, anytime your health is not right, everybody knows that that's the first thing on your mind, that you wake up in the morning, don't feel well, and you're dizzy and you can't do the things you love. Aside from wrestling, he just wanted to live a normal life. So to see him back, to see him going to be wrestling, that's a huge thing. We haven't seen the best of Adam Cole in AEW yet. I think we all had high hopes. People forget he did make the debut with Bryan Danielson, and he was the 1B to Bryan Danielson's 1A. They were supposed to be on the same level, and they were two different stories. Bryan Danielson's been booked pretty perfectly, in my opinion, aside from not winning the title, but I digress about that. Adam Cole's been booked as poorly as you probably could. And I think a lot of that has the fact that he's tied with the Elite. And I think if they have them go two separate ways for a little bit here, maybe bookend that feud and figure it out with Kenny Omega, because that was never sewn up at all. Adam Cole deserves his own spotlight, and to be muddied with the Undisputed Era or whatever they were calling themselves at the time and the Elite, it just felt like he was a crony. And I think back at that feud, I think he had with the Elite, they made him look like he was a little bitch and like he looked like a sidekick. And that's why he left WWE. He didn't want to be Keith Lee's manager. So they have a lot of rehab to do as far as character work goes to make Adam Cole feel like a legitimate threat. He's had shots at the titles. He's had main event opportunities. Of course, he won the Owen Hart tournament, the first ever one, but it just feels like he hasn't clicked with the AEW audience. And I'm looking forward to that, because the Ring of Honor, PWG, the independent scene, Adam Cole, he lit the world on fire. People forget how hot, how great he was. Even the NXT, he was awesome.
Oh, dude, and NXT was incredible. ROH, the myth of Adam Cole, that's what took him to NXT. I'm a huge fan of Adam Cole, but I'm with you. Like, he entered super strong, the 1B to Bryan Danielson's 1A. And then, he comes out, he had that awesome Dynamite. I believe it was his debut when he tells Tony Schiavone, "Get out, nerd," where he gets right in the face of Schiavone with the whole Britt Baker angle. Fans were loving it. He seemed like a big deal in those first couple weeks. And then I think he got lost in the sauce of the Elite. And like you said, he did kind of feel like a crony. I think to that lights out match with Orange Cassidy, man, that match just soured me on his entire booking at the time. I think injuries are never good. I don't want to make it seem like I'm painting that light. I'm not, but sometimes with an injury, there is a silver lining of starting fresh, starting clean. And I think him not coming in during any type of Elite angle, he's on his own. It looks like it's a babyface turn. The promo, I mentioned it was a good news, bad news promo. Well, the bad news end of that was him saying, "The bad news isn't for me, it's for the AEW locker room." Instantly, the crowd's behind him. I think they're building, just in this initial promo, we could have a great babyface run for Adam Cole. As much as I'm a fan of him as a heel, and I think that's where he does his best work, right now, you could be laying the groundwork, planting the seeds for one of MJF's future opponents. And I'm here for an MJF Adam Cole feud.
Absolutely. And the other thing I want to touch on was the introduction from Tony Schiavone. And there was some heat from some people. I heard whispers, but they didn't like how Tony Schiavone introduced him in a negative way. But I would go the opposite way. I mean, he had to, if it's Tony Schiavone. But I guess you could make the argument it didn't have to be Tony introducing him. But that added to the swerve, because people thought possibly it was MJF who was supposed to be coming out here for the whatever he was doing on that night. He was advertised to speak in the ring. He said he was supposed to be in LA. I personally like how they did it. And it's okay to have diversity in how you present your characters. You can be a good guy, but have, heat with somebody that's also a good guy. It makes your wrestling multi-layered. It doesn't have to fit in equal boxes. Sometimes Tony Schiavone is going to have beef with somebody else, and that's what makes it perfect. I remember JBL as an announcer used to always have heat with Rey Mysterio because they had a feud. So even when JBL was, a good guy announcer, he was always hating Rey Mysterio. And to me, that makes your wrestling a little bit more textured. And you have to think big picture about these things. It doesn't make Adam Cole a bad guy just because Tony Schiavone doesn't like him.
Oh, you're hitting the nail on the head, man. The textured, complex style of storytelling. This isn't the Fed, man. Take your pills, cure the Fed brain, open your way up to a new way of thinking, because I loved it. I loved that when my mind, as soon as Schiavone gave him that opening salvo, I'm one of those people, here comes MJF. And when it was Cole, it was a legit surprise, but it's not that Stanford way of, hey, let's have Schiavone butter him up as a baby. When we know the history of Schiavone, Adam Cole, Britt Baker, there's a little heat between them. And I love that they treat us like a smart fan, because he didn't need Tony to butter him up like a baby. He needed he was going to do that himself with this excellent promo he cuts. So I like them staying true to the relationship between Shivani and Adam Cole. I think fans appreciate stuff like that.
You got to treat your fans like they're smart. And that's the criticism I've always had with the WWE product as of late. And even back in the day, even when they were during the Ruthless Aggression era, there's certain things they would just bypass and they would whitewash over whole errors of storyline. And most notably, and my friends make fun of me for this, I always bring it up, WrestleMania 20, they're doing that Cruiserweight Open. You got Nunzio and Jamie Noble in the ring wrestling each other. They didn't mention once they were cousins. They were brought in together. You know, Nunzio was brought in as a henchman for Jamie Noble because it's his family. That was the epitome to me in a small nugget size of like, they don't give a shit. They're just going to treat you like you have a goldfish brain. And that's not how I operate as a wrestling fan. Most AEW audience doesn't as well.
Yeah, man, that I hate being spoon-fed stuff. I hate being treated like you said. I have the memory of a goldfish because those tiny little details add so much more layers and what you said, texture to storytelling, because everything's connected. And I think, with McMahon, sometimes it's like he would say, if that's going to mess up the story because there's not this consistency, screw it. They won't mind. We'll just ignore that aspect of the storytelling. And I think that's laziness, honestly.
100%. And, bringing it back to Adam Cole for a sec, I think he is destined for another main event push here, but I think it's going to take time to build it up. I'm not exactly sure where that feud will take them. Obviously, Omega and the Young Bucks are tied up in that trios thing, and they have a feud hopefully soon with somebody, maybe House of Black, fingers crossed. But with Adam Cole, I think he's going to need a meaningful program with someone that can really showcase his skills in the ring, because outside of being presented as a character, the other thing he does well is wrestle. So I want to see him go out there and maybe have a program with someone that could be on his level and highlight the things he can do and not just be lost in the sauce. That's what he felt like. I want him to be a showcase on the show because that's what he is. He's a star.
Honestly, I don't want to see him aligned with the Elite in 2023. And I think they have the ability with the groundwork they've laid. If you leave the Elite in that trios division, having 6-man tag matches like that, I feel like you can easily keep them apart. And then say Cole would get to that title at the end of 2023, then 2024, you could have Omega circle back to the title and have that awesome feud to cap off that storyline. But right now, I'm with you. Keep them apart. Put him in something that makes him feel big. Put him in a match with someone who can showcase him. It's hard for me to wonder who they're going to stick him with next. Like, what's going to be that first program to build him back up?
Yeah, it's tough. And the other thing I have in mind is to keep him away from Britt as well. Obviously, everybody knows they're married, but that doesn't have to mean they're in segments together. I think that was another thing, because it's that Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins effect. Think about the worst version of Becky Lynch we've seen in the last 5 years and the worst version of Seth Rollins. It was the man and the man's man situation. You don't want that being muddy in the water. Of course, they're married. They want to be on screen together and stuff like that, but let them do their own thing. They're both talented individuals. They don't have to be tied on screen together. Like, that's another thing. It's just keep them apart.
Yeah, I think that just hurts anyone. It's very, very hard when you play that up, that personal relationship on screen. It rarely ever works. like you said, Becky and Seth, I think that union of them on television is really what set Seth Rollins back for a while.
Same thing with Becky, though. Like, Becky felt hollow. And then once the merchandise machine got a hold of the man gimmick, where it just became printing shirts and it's on a Christmas sweater, I get it. Austin 316's on all those things, but they took it and drove it into the ground. And the man was like the last organic thing we had on WWE television. And they took even that and smushed it in your face until you're sick of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think this is who he's going to feud with, because I think they're trying to build up both guys and they're both baby faces right now. But down the line, couple years from now, I would love to see Adam Cole mixing it up with Ricky Starks. I think it's just body type, style wise. I think they could bring some exciting stuff, but I am very intrigued. Who is the heel? Who is going to be the big bad to really put some steam behind Adam Cole?
Yeah, but also, I mean, before we move on to the second story here, you could even, I know we mentioned the bad parts of the Orange Cassidy story, but maybe he just takes the All Atlantic Championship from him. And that's like the signal of a new era. He just bodies through Orange Cassidy and gets his win and then goes elsewhere and starts defending that All-Atlantic Championship across the Indies. That'd be a lot of fun to see him maybe even when Ring of Honor has a television show to bring it over there, and then maybe New Japan Pro Wrestling, and who knows, Impact. It'd be really fun to see him also cross the threshold of maybe going to PWG or it'd be fun.
Yeah. The options are unlimited. And I think we're going to see hopefully a little more focus on Cole and him not playing second fiddle to a cast of characters. But you want to get into topic number 2?
Let's get into it. So this story's been ever changing since we last joined you last Tuesday, but here we are, WWE's impending sale. As you all saw since we last joined you, I'm sure if you're watching this, you mean you're keeping up on the news. But let's remind you, WWE's board of directors unanimously elect Vince McMahon's executive chairman of the board, which is a little deceiving because he put people in place to vote for him. So the people that voted against him are no longer in those seats. The other fallout, we talked in depth about it, was Stephanie resigning, possibly due to the Saudi sale. We conjecture that possibly could be that she can't be in a position of power. Maybe it's personal relationship issues with Vince McMahon. We don't know, but obviously where there's smoke, there's fire. There's some issue there that Stephanie has not really been in the same place at the same time with Vince. And once he was back, she left again. So the thing I found interesting is because everyone's so quick to saying the sale's not happening with Saudi. Meltzer, and we'll go through Dave's raves, but this is something I put in here in the notes, and this is the quote from Meltzer about the UFC sale, because this is just as relevant. UFC
100%.
This whole situation is so comparable to that. And Meltzer said, having covered the UFC sale, even when the company had privately gotten word out and a number of companies were bidding and the bidding was closing in on $4 billion, Dana White denied both publicly and to his own employees that the company was for sale at all, when secretly it was very much for sale, and most of the high-ranking employees knew nothing and were outright told stories weren't true. So similarly, when Strikeforce was sold, Scott Coker kept the news quiet until the deal was completed from even the key people involved in the company. Sounds very familiar. I mean, we see all these stories breaking. Triple H says business as usual. Creatives are still under my watch. Vince is moving in to the chair today, and he's saying he wants to suggest some changes. It would not shock me that in, say, April, after WrestleMania in LA hits, this deal goes public. Like, I still don't. Everyone's so quick to say, I told you so. It's not actually happening, and they're just trying to negotiate a deal. They're trying to get the highest bidder. I wouldn't be so sure. A lot of these deals take a while to get going, and they have to deny it because they're still publicly traded at the moment. But that's not to say Vince is not working behind the scenes. And like I said, you have to follow where the tea leaves are here. You have to read through the lines. They're not going to tell you straight up. So I think the writing's on the wall here that this is actually still going to happen.
Oh, yeah. And full disclosure, we released that special. We went 2 hours talking about Stephanie resigning, the possible Saudi deal. There had been erroneous reports that came out and confirmed the Saudi deal since we recorded that. I guess it was a couple journalists, quote unquote, jumping the gun on reporting it. But I'm with you, man. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't think this Saudi thing is a done, like it's dead in the water and now let's move on to Comcast. I think it's very possible that, I think they're the front runner. If it's just me, kind of like you said, reading the tea leaves, I've followed UFC pretty closely since about 2005. And when that sale went through, man, I'm listening to podcasts every week, trying to keep my finger on the pulse of just fandom of that sport. And when that sale went through, that was huge. You're talking about the Fertittas buying that company in, I think, 2001. So they had owned it since 2001. They bought it for $2 million from the first company. And Dana White was kind of the president figurehead. So when it came out, he's the guy talking to the press. He denied it left and right that anything was going. And when it came out that Endeavor had purchased them for $4 billion, it was out of nowhere. There were rumblings, but no confirmation. Everything was denied by the company. And then when it came out, it's like all those reports and insider info that was leaking came to fruition. And there was truth behind those reports. So with this, I think that you're seeing a lot of the same thing in this sell. And a big thing that came out is WWE retained the services for the Rain Group LLC as financial advisor, Kirkland and Ellis LLP as legal advisor, and August LLC as strategic communications advisor. WWE says they will support the board of directors in connection with a review of strategic alternatives to maximize value for all the WWE stockholders. The interesting thing about this is that both Kirkland and August were involved in the press release that McMahon put out announcing his intentions to return. But perhaps more noteworthy is the inclusion of the Reign Group. Not only was Reign involved with the sale of the English Premier League's Chelsea FC, where the Saudi government was in the mix as a potential bidder, but it was part of numerous meetings that the Saudi General Sports Authority had with American companies, including WWE in 2018. So how Reign's involvement reflects on this, the past reports of JP Morgan being involved, this looks like they've got a new financial advisor, and it's a financial advisor who has worked closely with the Saudis before.
Yeah, and you and I were speaking on Tuesday, and of course, everybody was using as a therapy session in the chat about worst case scenario if this happens. If, say, this group of investors from Saudi Arabia do purchase WWE, that it's the end of days for the company. And yeah, that might be true because it's contingent on not people watching. It's contingent on the fact that they can get a television deal. If you look at Live Golf, despite them having professional golfers involved in that thing, they still cannot get a television deal because no one wants to be in bed with the investors because of the bad PR.
Right.
So if you look at it that way, WWE, if they can guarantee if Vince is talking to them and he has another person saying, I'm guaranteeing you, we have a lucrative TV deal on the horizon, even if these guys are the ones supporting you, I don't think the fans are going anywhere. So we talked about the difference between sports and wrestling. Obviously there's entertainment. And there's a lot of propaganda that, that whoever owns it has the chance to put on there if they're feeling like they want. And you look at Crown Jewel, Greatest Royal Rumble, Peacock was okay with putting that stuff on. We saw a lot of propaganda pro Saudi Arabia on their shows. And who knows, we weren't in those meetings, obviously, but it was on the air. So how much of that will be on Raw? How much of that would be on SmackDown? And would Fox or whoever, USA, be okay with that being on their television screen? I don't know. But their cash cow is truly the TV deals. And they had a license to print money with these TV deals. And if that goes away because someone doesn't want to do business with them, we see other companies go out because of that reasoning. And Live Golf, you could throw as much money at them as you want. If you're not on television, no one's consuming your product.
Yeah, and Live Golf's really having an issue with kind of breaking through that tradition of the American-based company putting on golf. So there's a lot of questions about could Saudi broker deals, could Saudi break down barriers within the American corporate structure as far as these television deals and all of that. We have Belle Renette in the comments section, and they say, hi, honestly, I think there's a few reasons to why Stephanie walked. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if there's an even bigger shitstorm coming about Vince and she doesn't want any part of it. Speedy recovery to her. I mean, I think there could be things coming down the line that we don't know, obviously, that could have forced her to step away. There's something bigger at play. I don't think it was just a thing of Vince returning, Stephanie leaving. I think there's things that will come to light that we're kind of in the dark on right now.
But if they sell and they go private, a lot of that stuff gets swept under the rug. So there'll be the investigations, and a lot of times they could settle out of court. They don't have to turn over documents. They don't have to reveal financials. So there's a lot of strategic moves being done by Vince McMahon and his public relations team. We got to remember too, he's a smart businessman. It's not a coincidence that he's in business this long and that he's worth billions of dollars. At this point, it's more, he's in this position because he put himself in this position, and he's going to fight his way out to make sure that his reputation survives and that he can get the most profit for this company if he has to sell.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing to watch too, as far as what puts Saudi as a viable option, a more viable option than some companies. If what people are saying, fans, journalists, whatever you want to call it, we're not in those inner rooms, but there's a lot of rumblings of Vince wanting to take it private to kind of act as a safe house to all these allegations, to all the backroom handshake deals that he makes that maybe he doesn't want to be public. Comcast, Disney, companies like that, those are public companies. So if it sells to those companies, he's not going to be able to hide behind a private company. And I think Saudi is the one company that's a true possibility to take it private.
Yeah, and they're going to double or triple their financial capital. They'll be able to use it. But the problem is going back to the TV network here in the United States. It's all about perception and about how you're received by the public. And if there's any outrage by any consumers, like you said, Comcast or Fox, they're not going to want a piece of this because they don't want the bad backlash. And they're going to be stuck holding all that money with no one to give it to. So if you're not able to get on a television, we talk about Impact all the time on a very small level, but Impact putting on good product. And we're the third story here in our big stories, but they're on a mom and pop channel that you can't find. So if you can't get someone to take on your product because it's bad public relations, what's the point of getting all that money?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And another, talking about kind of shifting the narrative and painting the situation in a certain light, Triple H actually met with talent, and he wanted to ensure them that as of right now, he said anything could change, which I thought was very that's a key phrase in this. But he said, as of right now, Vince is coming back just to ensure the sell goes through properly and that he will not be any part of creative. Triple H is in total control, and he understands kind of the stress going through the locker room right now, but he wanted to ease those fears. But we saw that when Stephanie had that meeting, as soon as it was announced Vince was coming back, what did Steph say? Business as usual, nothing's changing. And then she resigns. So I don't know how far you can take Triple H's words to be gospel.
100%. And then before we move on from this topic, because obviously we talked about it in depth, and this conversation will always be ever flowing until it's settled. And even then it's going to be more of a conversation. But the interesting part here, and I'm sure it's probably tongue in cheek by a lot of people and journalists talking about it, but it's the cons. They're throwing their name into the ring about potentially purchasing WWE. And I'm sure it's like a late at night thought for Tony Khan as he's staring at the ceiling before he goes to sleep. Imagine him getting in the ring and doing that whole thing where it's like the name says Khan, but it's not Nick Khan, it's Tony Khan.
Right.
So as reported by the Wall Street Journal's sister site Barron's, the Khans will look to find a financial partner to align with. And Tony Khan said he was watching the situation very closely. You know, I give this at a 1% chance of happening. I really don't see this happening because Tony has his hands full with AEW. And what are you doing with the intellectual property of WWE? At the end of the day, those three letters mean more than AEW does. So what are you going to do? You're going to throw WWE in the garbage, use the tape library, and let AEW sit there? As we know, wrestling as monopoly is bad for wrestling. And I think Tony Khan truly knows that. So I don't think he wants to be holding both balls. He wants someone else on the other side that's willing to play with him and have a cohesive relationship. Do that forbidden door. I think he wants someone on the other side to challenge him, not take on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, I think that this is just a power stroke from the Khans, from Shad and Tony. Like, hey, we're kind of a flex a little bit. Like, you know, we're in the business of buying wrestling companies too. So I think it's just, I don't see it. I'm with you. I think it's a below a 1% chance. I don't know if I'd even want to see it because then it's going to, you know, obviously monopolize the sport in some sense. I thought that's what was great about Tony, is he was breaking down the monopolization of the sport. So I don't want to see that at all. It would be interesting. The only thing that would be positive about that is at least, you know, that library's in the fans of a fan, instead of, you know, that library being in the hands of the Saudis. Then it's kind of, I get a little nervous, but it's definitely a little bit of a power flex to me. Like, hey, we're out here. I just don't see them making that move. And at the end of the day, even if they really, really went after this purchase, it's got to be approved by Vince McMahon. I can't see Vince McMahon selling to the Khans.
Zero shot that would happen. But, you know, it's all, I'm sure Tony is, like I said, shadow boxing in his bedroom, talking about it and thinking how amazing it would be. But that's what it is, man. It's just a dream scenario that's not going to happen. But of course, I think we'll stick with, if the Jacksonville Jaguars win the Super Bowl, they get a WWE championship, and then we'll go from there. We'll build on that.
We'll see how that goes. You want to get into topic 3?
Let's get into it. All right, so we had Impact's Hard to Kill, Friday the 13th. a really good event. Impact is one of those understated promotions that a lot of people aren't paying attention to. And our job here at Wrestling Tonight, among other places, we want you to be paying attention to Impact as well, because a lot of talent that you love from the past, present, and potentially future are here in Impact, doing a really good job, working hard every single night. And let's start with the first story. Mickie James wins the women's championship. So she had a great entrance, the Native American garb. She was tapping to her roots, and they gave him 20 minutes. This was an awesome, awesome match. An underdog story for Mickie James to get the championship win. A really good moment. A lot of fun. For Mickie James to have that moment. And a lot of people will remember her time in WWE as that's the pinnacle where she's at. But I would make the argument a lot of her best character work in wrestling has been done in Impact.
Oh yeah. I mean, her time in TNA and Impact is just, in the wrestling space, I feel like that's where she really kind of cemented her status beyond just a diva at the time. She ran loose in WWE. I mean, multi-time champion, but I loved this. I loved the underdog story. I loved the entrance with the drums and her tapping into those roots. And Jordynne Grace is just a specimen. And going into this, I thought, man, she might be done with wrestling. Mickie might be putting the young gun over here, because Jordynne Grace has just been such a dominant powerhouse, like totally unique in the way she looks compared to other women's wrestlers, like just an absolute freak. But she dropped it to a legend, and I thought it was to have heat. It reminded me of Mox and Nick Gage in GCW when it was title versus career. And when you go into a title versus career match, it gets you thinking, especially when you have a Mickie James who could easily hang it up at any moment. This could be her last match, but I love that they give her this run in Impact again. She's a true star. Now, after the match, she brought her little boy in the ring, her and Nick Aldis, obviously the parents, the little boy came in celebrating. You had Victoria, the former diva, celebrating. Her family was there. It just felt like a big moment. And Mickie was interviewed in the back locker room immediately after, and we have that.
I knew it was going to be a battle. I knew the odds were stacked against me. And I want to say thank you, Jordan. Thank you for bringing out the best in me. The last rodeo may be over, but there's a new champ in the house. Let's ride.
Every time I see her, I think of Hawk during the entrance theme invitational. Hardcore country.
Yeah.
And then Steve doing the car commercials. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So check out the flagship, guys.
Yeah, check out the flagship every Thursday. Just cool to see a legend kind of, a lot of times when a legend's in this spot, this is the time they're putting over young talent. They're not getting those big wins, but she got that big win. And talking about, someone of relevance in the legend status, Bully Ray is coming after Josh Alexander's title on Hard to Kill. And you're wondering there, like, are they continuing this epic run by Josh Alexander, or is Bully going to be that heel that snakes it away from the babyface? And Bully ended up going down. He won that Call Your Shot gauntlet at Bound for Glory in 2022. He cashed in against Alexander, called his shot, told him ahead of time. He's been feuding, torturing Josh Alexander's wife, going after Tommy Dreamer, Scott D'Amore. It's really been a nice build-up to show just a despicable heel in Bully Ray. But he ends up losing to Josh Alexander. What a feather in the cap for Josh Alexander to take this full metal match and just take home the gold again.
Yeah, and Josh Alexander, this is an example of what Impact's doing right now. It took many years for them to get to the spot where they understand it's about the future talent. I know we just talked about Jordynne Grace losing, but losing to Mickie James in a 20-minute battle where she's putting her over in the press conference. And trust me, Jordynne Grace is no worse for the wear after losing that match against Mickie James. Josh Alexander, on the other hand, if he would have lost to Bully Ray, I think that would have been detrimental because it's such a dominant reign, as you mentioned. It brought prestige back to the Impact Championship. Of course, Bully Ray is a star, but Josh Alexander is going to be there night after night. Bully Ray has his radio show. He has a whole bunch of stuff going on. He's a part-time wrestler. Josh Alexander is really the heart and soul of what Impact's doing. And I was happy to see him get a a huge win because it felt like the momentum was coming for Bully Ray, where they're going to have, seems like the old Impact, where they'd have Bully win and then Josh Alexander would get his rematch down the line. They held strong with Josh Alexander being booked very strongly. And listen, he's on par with a lot of the world champions in the world right now. If you go down the company promotions, he's right at that level with everybody else.
Absolutely. He's got to be in the discussion of top wrestlers, top 10 working today. Guy's on an incredible run. And I think this was a notch on his belt. This was an X or a skull and crossbones on the side of his jet fighter of his career, because to put Bully Ray under your wins, that's huge, man. That's a name that maybe for fans that are casuals that aren't looking into Josh Alexander, you get a win over somebody a casual knows, like a Bully Ray, it does something for your run, I think.
Do you think Josh Alexander would benefit from going elsewhere? Not that we want to pull him away from Impact, because I think what he's doing right now is so great. But do you think he'd benefit from going to somewhere like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Possibly. I know AEW is so crowded, but I could see him thriving going against a lot of that roster there. I would love to see him challenging himself in that scope as well.
I think eventually, I think he runs this out, and I think he's going to get bigger and bigger in the eyes of the fans the more dominant this run is. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to see Josh Alexander mix it up with like Takeshita, with Bryan Danielson, with those type of guys. It would be a lot of fun. J-Bones in the comments, he said, from the time the North broke up until now, Impact did a perfect job booking Josh Alexander. They really have. Like,
good point.
They took that as a lot of people at the time of the North, Ethan Page was viewed as the next star. And, obviously he was the guy that chose to leave Impact. And I think they've proven like, hey, Ethan Page wasn't he wasn't the Shawn Michaels of this equation, and Josh Alexander's the Marty Jannetty. Like, we got two Shawn Michaels here. And I think the way they've booked Josh Alexander, they've showed that.
Yeah, and the other matches happened here, and most notably, Motor City Machine Guns retained the tag straps in that great four-way elimination tag match. Motor City Machine Guns just announced it'll be on GCW next month, so that's really cool. We saw them in AEW. They're bouncing all over the place. Two legends, and this is a nice mix of the card and Impact, where you got legends holding championships, you got new up-and-comers or current stars holding championships. It's a nice eclectic mix of different talent for every person in the audience to enjoy. It's a potpourri dish.
Absolutely. I love Motor City Machine Guns. Was always huge on Chris Sabin and obviously Alex Shelley. He's great. But yeah, I love that they've had this kind of revival to their career in Impact.
And then we got Trey Miguel retaining the X Division title over Black Taurus in a good match. Joe Hendry retained the Digital Media Championship over Moose. Kushida, who we'll see on Dynamite on Wednesday. Of course, we'll talk about that in the upcoming week. He won the 6-man X Division match.
He's getting around. Yeah.
Marty McFly, I love him. And I love his time in New Japan. I loved him in that short run in NXT as well. But the also thing, we had two debuts here, or I guess mainstays. One debut, one person saying they're staying in Impact. Frankie Kazarian announced he's signing with Impact. I know we have the clip here. I want to show what he's saying. So let's show the audience that. It's a good promo.
Yeah, and I really, I think this is a good move for Frankie. I like that he's one of the original guys in AEW. People forget about that. SCU, him and Scorpio, they were the first tag champs in AEW. Like, I was there the night they were crowned, as the first tag team champions. But he has kind of fell into that role of dark elevation, putting on good matches, underrated matches. I think Kaz is a very underrated wrestler in the eyes of the fans. I love that he's going back to Impact to kind of make a stake, make a claim that I'm still here.
Yeah, and that's his home too. That's where he built his name. So it's a great homecoming story. And we talk about AEW. Their roster is so crowded that it's hard to make the case for him to be even on the main roster, because yes, he's talented, but who are you replacing, for Kazarian? I really can't think of someone I'd rather see off TV. And that's not a detriment to what Kazarian can bring to the product. I think he's better suited, as is a lot of guys on this Impact roster, to be showcased in the right way. And he's in the perfect spot right here to potentially challenge Josh Alexander or just be involved in a main storyline and have a legitimate spotlight on him, and well-deserved.
Absolutely, man. Put him up there with your top guys. I would like to see him and Brian Myers mix it up. I think that would be some great wrestling matches. J-Bone says, Frankie is one of the most underutilized talents in all of wrestling. I agree. I mean, from match standpoint, he puts on bangers. I feel like he's always kind of been looked at like lacking the charisma X factor part of it all, but I've always enjoyed Frankie. I thought that Elite Hunter gimmick in AEW could have went a lot further, but happy to see him back in Impact.
We also had Santino Marella being named Director of Authority. Two things. I was shocked to see him being able to use Santino Marella. And what does this mean as far as an authority figure on Impact? He's still doing the Italian comedy gimmick a little bit. So I'm open to whatever possibility they have here, but it was a little bit shocking to see he's pretty much doing the Santino shtick that he had in WWE, all with the Cobra logo, everything entailed. So he's kind of doing a legacy act here.
Yeah, a little bit of a legacy act, not as goofy. It's like Santino Marella with a little bit more of an edge,
Right.
but he's still there. I think he's a talented guy. He's an entertaining guy. We'll see how it unfolds. I'm cautiously optimistic to see how this authority figure plays out for Santino.
And Masha Slamovich won the number one contendership to the Knockouts title. Eddie Edwards defeated Jonathan Gresham. Jonathan Gresham quietly found a home back in Impact. I know his significant others there and Jordan Grace, so they're there together. But all that sort of drama, I mean, Jonathan Gresham's drama in the summer looks very, very understated now because of everything that went on with Punk. But that was a pretty big story for a bit where he had some heat with Tony Khan. He found a nice little home in Impact again.
Yeah, he did not like the handling of ROH once Tony took over. There was the story, the locker room story, the heat, like you said. I want to see him at the top of the card, man. A feud with Gresham and Josh Alexander would be money. You would just have to put Gresham into a heel role. I wonder if he's capable of really doing that, but we'll see. Because the guy, I mean, he's bell to bell, one of the best.
Of course, and I'm a huge fan of him, and I like to see that he found a home here. I thought potentially he'd still run the Indies, be in GCW elsewhere, but Impact's a good spot for him. I mean, Impact gives people the opportunity to work elsewhere, so it's not like we're not going to see Gresham other places.
Right.
But you mentioned Ring of Honor. PCO made his return. The Wrestling Frankenstein. I'm a huge fan of PCO. I know there was conversation about him possibly showing up to wrestle Jericho on that match where he was challenging a former champion. It wound up being Colt Cabana, which caused its own ripple effect in its own way. But PCO is of an older generation, a guy who could still give a lot to the business, and one of those guys that people can learn under the learning tree of a guy who reinvented himself from being a WWF old school tag team wrestler to being the world champion of Ring of Honor. And, you know, personally, I think PCO is a very, very talented guy that doesn't get mentioned enough. He was part of that Ring of Honor era where it was a little bit the Sinclair mess, where they didn't have any distribution, but he had a really good run as champion and very entertaining, very.
Oh, I mean, he is like one of the true holy shit daredevils of pro wrestling. Some of the stuff he was doing during that Ring of Honor run was pretty it was GIF worthy. Everything he did was showing up in your feeds. What crazy thing did the French Canadian Frankenstein do this week? But happy to see PCO back. I know he was dealing with some injuries, so it's good to see him back with a company like Impact. Overall, man, I thought this was a great show. People, you need to tune in. I'm interested to see the fallout from this and where we go with it.
Absolutely. I think Impact is a good secondary option for people that are, maybe they're not happy with AEW's booking, and maybe they're not happy with WWE's booking. Bring your loyalty over to Impact if you're feeling like you're a little bit disenchanted with what's going on in the companies that you're loyal to, because, you know, put your money where your mouth is. If it's something you don't want to watch, if AEW is pissing you off or WWE is not enjoyable, consume the other products. Go watch GCW on Fight. Make sure you watch Impact.
Yeah.
Support other companies if you're not happy.
100%. And they're offering a true alternative. They've upped their production value. Their backstage promos they're honing everything in. They're getting a lot of good minds there. You've got Tommy Dreamer, Bully Ray's back. I think Raven has even been putting his hands in over there.
Lance Storm is there as well.
Storm is there booking. I mean, these guys are putting on banger matches. So definitely give Impact your time.
Yeah, and they're not trying to be something they're not either. I think that's back in the day they were trying to fill that number 2 slot. And I think a lot of pressure was taken off of their brand when it was quite clear they weren't going to be able to keep up with the financials, the cons in AEW. They fell very nicely in that number 3, and they're really thriving there because there's not that pressure to sign those big stars and and get those guys like the Hogans and Macho at one point. Like, that's not their identity anymore. They're a breeding ground for good, high quality work rate matches and young stars to go and hone their craft and possibly not be a feeder promotion, but that might be their identity at this point. And that's not a bad thing.
No, I mean, I love that they're not breaking the bank, going after the top tier people. They pick and choose really well. You know, Steve Macklin, he's been rejuvenated there. You've got so many, Joe Hendry, guys crushing it right now. One of the more entertaining guys to watch. Then you've got all their homegrown guys like Trey Miguel, Ace Austin. I love their roster. Jordan Grace. I'm a fan of their roster and what they're doing.
And the Impact app is worth having as well, because their library is very, very deep. You were posting some stuff on the Turnbuckle page with the old Angle stuff and D'Lo Brown wrestling AJ Styles. There's a really rich history in Impact, and they went through eras where they were the NWA TNA, then they were TNA, then they were Total Nonstop Action, and then moving into the Impact. But there's a lot of good stuff in there that you probably missed, if you're being honest with yourself.
Absolutely. If they were on a regular cable network that everyone got, they would be they're only a victim to their TV deal. And that's if they had a bigger presence by a bigger company that could put more money behind them, they would be a lot bigger than they are. They're small, not because of poor product. They're small because of a poor TV deal. They are just as good as any other mainstream wrestling coming out there. They're just different. They're Impact Wrestling.
Again, bring it full circle to the second story. TV deals are very important. If you don't have those, you have nothing.
Exactly. You want to get into quick hitters, Ace? I think that wraps up our big three.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Man, I love quick hitters. We're going to come at you fast and furious. There's a lot of news to get to. And the number one news in quick hitters, a massive Netflix docuseries on WWE's Vince McMahon is still in the works. This was confirmed by Bill Simmons, and that was on Friday. So there was some conversation. Maybe they won't do it because of all the drama surrounding it, but they're probably sitting in the room, rubbing their hands together, thinking about the money that can be printed with all the drama that's unfolded in the last 6-7 months.
Oh, you got to go back into production, get the camera crews back out, man. It's not over. You've just written your act 3 of this docuseries. I'm a huge fan of Bill Simmons, the Ringer. Love what he does. I mean, the Tavern, we've kind of like looked to them for inspiration. So I'm so glad that this docuseries isn't falling on the cutting room floor and that they're still working on it, because I am super jazzed to watch this series. I loved Bill Simmons' Andre the Giant documentary. I thought it was phenomenal. The guy loves pro wrestling, and I think he'll be fair in this documentary.
Johnny Gargano has not wrestled on Raw since taking the loss to Omos back on November 21st. We are having conversation about whether this grade 2 AC sprain is a work or a shoot. Meltzer says in the newsletter from this Monday, the Gargano injury they announced on Raw is legit. He sprained his AC joint, which is his shoulder, which he suffered at the 12:30 house show in Toronto, which doesn't excuse the fact that he was off TV for a month before that. He said he's looking at being back for the Rumble, and that injury is usually about a month or so off, but it's a close call if he'll be able to make it. But his booking's been spotty anyway, so you don't even miss him, really.
Yeah, one of the worst booked guys in the influx of talent that Triple H brought back when he took over creative. He says he's going to be coming back at the Rumble with an injury like that. Possibly, maybe he's pushing it a little bit. But if I was him looking at the creative, I wouldn't be rushing back, because I haven't been a big fan on how they've handled Gargano.
Missed opportunity to go elsewhere and redefine yourself. I would have loved to see him in GCW and work with young guys like Jordan Oliver and Nick Wayne and put on matches there and raise your stock back up. I'm not saying his stock needed to be raised, but people put him in this little category, and I'm sure Vince and everybody in WWE, Triple H, they see him as a certain thing, but I think he had the opportunity to change what he's looked as, and he didn't take that opportunity, and it's a missed opportunity.
100%. They teased us too much with that Blake Edwards GCW feud with Gargano. They were both chirping back and forth in social media. I was wanting that Blake Christian feud so much, and it didn't come to fruition, so now we're left with him and The Miz and Dexter, and come on.
So despite the WWE tryout and the main event appearance, Kylie Ray remains unsigned and still a free agent. So, she's free to take bookings elsewhere. She's been in the aforementioned GCW doing work there. She'd be a good addition to the WWE's women's division if they were going to be using her, but it seems like they're going a different way.
Yeah, and I think she might fall victim to her gimmick. I know they could bring her in and change her, but she very much for a long time, fans, at least WWE fans, looked at her as a kind of a Bayley knockoff. I think Kylie's a lot different, but she struggled, with mental health, and she was in AEW and Impact and NWA and always found herself leaving the companies. Huge fan of Kylie Ray. Hopefully she lands somewhere and she's happy with where she's at.
Talent always rises, and I feel if she can get a consistent spot on someone's card, she's going to be able to be back in that position again. So whether it's WWE or AEW, she's going to be there if she's willing to be there. So time will tell. So Jacob Fatu took on Dragon Gate's Ben Kay in the final match of MLW's recent tapings. He injured his knee during the match, so there's no word on the severity of the injury or if it will affect plans for the rematch with the current World Heavyweight Champion, Alex Hammerstone, which MLW has been really trying to build towards. It's been their cornerstone of their whole programming. It's been what they've been building towards. And as a heel, Fatu was the longest reigning MLW champion, if you guys remember, part of the faction Contra unit. So he dropped the title back to Hammerstone in October 2021 at Fightland. They want to pay off that story. Jacob Fatu looks like he might be going off to do other things. There's been some rumblings that possibly involved with WWE, and that hasn't been confirmed, but I could totally see it happening. He has the look, he has the body, he has the in-ring skill. So I know MLW wants to really wrap this up and make their money while he's there.
Yeah, I mean, that Alex Hammerstone Fatu storyline has been, like you said, the cornerstone of the main event storyline in MLW for a long, long time. I think Jacob Fatu is one of the top people that the big companies look at as, I want to scoop this guy up when available. Now, he did re-sign. There was an opportunity where he could have went and he re-signed with MLW. But I mean, he's tailor-made for any of the major companies, especially when you look at his lineage, his bloodline. WWE seems like a place where they could inject him into that main event scene, and it makes sense. I'm a huge Jacob Fatu fan. I love his GCW shit. The guy is mean as all hell. I don't want to see him in that WWE world. I know it fits the bloodline angle, but I think it would take just a little bit of his edge away, because that guy, man, if you watch his work, he's on another level when it comes to just believability, meanness. I love Jacob Fatu.
And MLW doesn't really sign on long-term deals, so I'm sure it's probably like a year, 2 years. So we don't have that long to wait if Jacob Fatu wants to transfer over somewhere, and time flies in the wrestling world. So we'll see where he decides to go after, but you have to imagine he's outgrown MLW. I know he re-signed, like you mentioned, but a lot has changed since he signed that deal.
Yes.
So Drew McIntyre and Sheamus have a name for their tag team. They announced it on SmackDown. They can be called the Banger Bros going forward. So the thing that Meltzer brought this, I mean, we could talk about the name and what it means, but the thing that popped into my mind and Meltzer's mind as well in conversation is what that means for Orton and Riddle, because we know WWE doesn't put names together that are very similar. RK Bro obviously being the team of Orton and Riddle. Meltzer says it would mean there's no imminent plans for them to return, because WWE doesn't usually like to do names so similarly. Obviously, Riddle serving a suspension, Orton with a career-threatening back injury. It seems very odd that they have this name going, and maybe it's writing on the wall that we've seen the last of RK Bro, and that's a shame, man. That was a legendary team. Yeah,
this name sounds like something I would have to enter a email and a password to get through a paywall to watch something on Pornhub. This name is just like the Banger Bros. I'm like, oh man, I don't know. I like the team
on GCW called the Bang Bros as well. So I mean, I feel like that's a little. I mean, you had the ER and you can copyright something else, but I get what they're going for. I get the spirit of it because they're putting on banger matches, but it definitely comes off as this low grade porno film. So
it's very open for memes. Like, it's very meme worthy, this name. I get the banger after banger. I get that. I like the team. I like both guys. So we'll see how the name plays out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into more conversation about Drew McIntyre, but him being, and I get that they've earned each other's respect and they're teaming up, but WWE has this formula where they don't know what to do with these main guys. And Drew McIntyre he was anointed to be the next guy.
Yep.
To be battling on a different show with Roman Reigns. Is this the sign that they're giving up on him being one of the top guys in their company? Because you're in a tag team, you're on the level of a lot of different guys that are not looked at in the same light.
Yeah, he's essentially falling into that Cesaro spot in what were the bar. Yeah. So I don't know, man. It does kind of, the booking of it does kind of look bad for McIntyre, like he's out of that title picture.
Yeah, I mean, he was so close to winning that championship at Clash of the Castle. No one would have blinked an eye if he would have beat Roman. It seemed like it was right there for him to take. But yeah, now he's just kind of lingering. What are they doing? I guess that's the byproduct of having Roman Reigns be so dominant. A lot of guys have to fall off and have something else to do when they don't have a chance to have that reign. I mean, it's been 800 something days at this point. Other guys haven't had the opportunity. And I'm not saying take the title off Roman, but figure out something else to do with Drew instead of being in a tag team.
Yeah.
So Kyle O'Reilly, as we know, is out. You know, his stablemate from the Undisputed Era returned, but he's not sure when he's going to be returning because he's dealing with post-neck surgery issue that he'll disclose at a later date. He said it's led to a lot of frustration and confusion, anger. He doesn't want to return as good. He said he doesn't want to return as good as he was and wants to come back better, and talked about training harder, eating smarter, fully recover. The thing that really muddies the water for him is the type 1 diabetes that he has to fight through in his recovery. So thoughts to Kyle O'Reilly. Hope he can get back strong. And he seemed like someone Tony Khan really enjoyed. He gave him some really big shine in big spots. So if Kyle can come back, I think he'd have a really prominent spot on the AEW roster.
Yeah, huge thoughts go out to Kyle. I hope he comes back stronger than ever. But yeah, he talked about the diabetes puts him at a disadvantage in the recovery process. He's not recovering maybe what someone without it would. So I hope everything works out and he gets back to where he needs to be.
Fightful report that Jay White's New Japan Pro Wrestling contract is ending soon and then he's going to North America. Unclear where he's going. We know North America has a plethora of options. Sources believe that both WWE and AEW are interested in signing Jay White. However, sources say WWE is confident they can land him if they can throw him at the most money and give him the most, I guess, appealing deal. So that brings us to the question, do you think Jay White fits into the landscape of WWE, or do you think it's something that will water him down? Because he didn't really have that impact on AEW we thought he would when he showed up on TV.
Yeah, I mean, with WWE, it's always what is the brass thinking? Because obviously if they get behind a guy, they can make anyone. And I do think Jay White has the ability to carry the weight. It's just, how are they going to handle him? How are fans going to respond to him? I think it'll take time. I don't think the vast majority of WWE's casuals are tapped into New Japan like the hardcores are. So you got to wonder, like, if the guy would come out at the Rumble, what would his reaction be? But Jay White's a star. I think in AEW, he just kind of turns into another guy.
Right.
Especially with his style and everything. I would like to see him go to WWE and be pushed correctly. I think it would be somebody nice to see up there having matches with Seth Rollins and those 100%. Type of guys.
Took the words out of my mouth. I think Seth Rollins and Jay White would make for a really, really entertaining, memorable WrestleMania match, whether it be at the top of the card, middle of the card, doesn't matter. Opening the show with it would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So the Ring of Honor Super Card of Honor show will take place over WrestleMania weekend in Los Angeles. This has been a tradition for Ring of Honor, and Tony Khan's not moving from it. So he said in the past he wouldn't put AEW in WrestleMania week, but they announced many top stars and other international companies will be on the show for 331. So this is a loophole of his promise. He's going to go head-to-head with SmackDown at the Crypto Arena in LA. This is going to be at the Gallon Center on the campus of USC. 7,000 people can be in attendance for this pay-per-view. And yeah, this is a big news because we weren't sure if they're going to continue the Super Card of Honor tradition on WrestleMania weekend because of what Tony said last year. And here we are. I think it's a good thing for Ring of Honor diehards.
No, I love that he's honoring the tradition. It's kind of a loophole, but it's him honoring ROH's legacy by keeping it. I don't think it's him trying to make some statement. I think the longtime fans of ROH appreciate these decisions.
And guys, make sure you guys tune into the Tavern during that whole weekend of WrestleMania, not just to cover WWE, but we're going to be covering all that in depth. It's such a fun time. Even, there's some watch alongs going on for the GCW events. Make sure you guys are locked into the Tavern. That's something that was a really fun time. It was when I first came into being involved in the Tavern fold during WrestleMania time. It was fantastic. So I can't wait for it this year.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Always fun.
So Saraya tweeted out that she wants to see Taya Valkyrie in AEW. Saraya wants Tony Khan to continue to strengthen the division with veteran talent. And Taya responded with, I love you so much. So the women's division's been a topic of conversation in a good way the last couple of weeks, that they felt like they've been putting more emphasis, more quality matches on the card, giving them time to shine, not just throwing them out there. She would be a huge get for them. And I'm all for it, man. If you can strengthen that women's division and make it even better, Taya Valkyrie is another person that would really help them get to where they want to go.
Yeah, there's so many good matchups. I know Ty has even stated in the past that there's so much talent over there she would love to play with. I would love to see Ty. She would be a welcome addition in the AEW women's division.
So we have NWA World Women's Champion Camille. She talked about her interest in joining WWE. So she said, and I quote, WWE is like the Yankees. They're the top of the top. I think anybody who takes their wrestling career seriously, they want to end up, even if it's just for 5 years or something like that. She continues to talk about everything going on in her career. Of course she wants to go there. And NWA, we talked about Impact being a feeder company. NWA during that pandemic era, they were the feeder company to get new stars. Talk about Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks, even LA Knight. Those guys all had a cup of coffee in NWA and really got themselves going. And same's going to be with Camille. She has other things to do instead of just being on YouTube.
Yeah, people talk about Jade being, that WWE template for star quality. Camille has a little bit of that too. I think Camille in WWE could definitely work. She's a specimen, man.
So NXT UK star Ginny announced her retirement from in-ring competition after being in the business for 7 years. She wrestled in promotions like Progress, Pro Wrestling's Eve, and just injuries kind of caught up with her. And I think she wants to just hang up the boots, and it sucks because she had a lot more to give to the business, but she's got to think about her health first.
Yeah, she said, after a long time away due to an injury, I've made the decision to hang up my fashionable boots. So all the best to Jenny. Who knows? She may still be in the world of wrestling, just not in the ring.
CM Punk has been active on social media. I can't see it. He blocked me, but he's mocking AEW ratings after MJF posted a photo of himself holding the plaques from the PWI Awards for Feud of the Year and the Most Hated. On the Feud of the Year, MJF being tongue-in-cheek and being cheeky in his own way, he taped over Punk's name and written his own over it. So MJF versus MJF. Punk responded with, and I quote, maybe find some tape for the ratings so nobody see those either. So, Punk putting the tea leaves out there that he probably wants to come back, stoking the flames of that feud with MJF. I think we're going to be seeing him in 2023.
I don't know if you saw the picture he posted of him and Brody King hanging out, and he said Brody King, he told the story of him wrestling in at the Forum, and Brody King had a cool little story, and he said, go look at that. It's a cool. So he's totally putting over AEW in his own way so much. I feel like this is gaining steam. Like we said, I think this is going to go somewhere.
Completely agree. And we also saw AEW have a show in LA, and Hollywood turned out for it in Los Angeles. Ken Jeong, Paul Walker Hauser, Freddie Prinze Jr., Blake Anderson from Workaholics, Mark Maron, Adam Jones from Tool, Vince Vaughn, Tim Robinson. I'm sure others were there that just weren't shown. It was a who's who, and this is something that WWE prides themselves on. It was cool to see AEW have their own little flex with this Hollywood scene, the hip product in LA.
Yeah, I loved it, man. The picture of Adam Jones from Tool and Mark Maron hanging out with the commentary table, Dasha and Justin, it was awesome. So I like when, you see other artists respecting pro wrestling. It makes me feel good.
Sting's AEW contract ends sometime in 2023. He stated in the past that when he wants to retire, he wants to be in AEW, and he's going to put the face paint away. We heard too that he wants Darby Allin to be involved in the retirement segment. So there's no word on what exactly happens and when it ends in 2023. All we know is that it's coming quick. And I think we're going to be seeing a very similar send-off that we had with the Great Muta.
Yeah. I'm a Stinger. I've always been a fan of Sting's. So to see him have this final act of his career in AEW, it makes me happy. And I know they're going to send him off like the true legend he is.
We had Lanny Poffo recently shared a story on the Rene Dupree podcast talking about a potential hair versus career match that would have been involving Shawn Michaels in 1994. So the quote said he didn't want to leave, but he had an idea that he could end his career with a better match than he had with Steamboat by working with Shawn Michaels. It would build to a great crescendo. And his idea was if Shawn Michaels loses, he loses his hair. And if Randy loses, since his hair was nothing to speak of, he would lose his career and then be relegated to the announcer's desk. Can you freaking imagine that match in 1994? WrestleMania 10.
God. Like, sometimes I hate hearing these what if situations that never came to pass and have no chance of coming to pass. There's a little piece of me that just gets so sad that we didn't get to see
I wish
that.
Papa didn't tell us.
I know. Don't tell me, man.
The other thing I think of is Eddie Guerrero versus Shawn Michaels. That's supposed to happen at WrestleMania 22, and it didn't because obviously Eddie passed away. That would have been amazing as well.
Unreal.
So Dax Harwood commented on the AEW locker room being unhappy with his podcast comments on the CM Punk Elite situation. So he talks about how Punk is a good guy. He's going to give you 100% the God's honest truth the whole time. So he wants to tell both sides of the story, but he knew this was happening. Everybody knew that you're going to get heat when you start being transparent. There's going to be people that feel a certain way about what you're saying. And the podcast itself, whether what you're saying doesn't matter, you're putting your thoughts out there. And people in the wrestling business, some current and some in the past, would not be a fan of what Dax is doing as being an active performer while telling a tell-all. I know it's par for the course now. We know that it's very commonplace, but wrestlers back in the day would not be a fan of what Dax is doing. But I can imagine some people have heat with what he was saying about Punk.
Yeah, and, I think that's unfortunate because I think really all of it comes from a good place with Dax. He's just wanting AEW to be in the best position possible. And let's be honest, AEW with the Elite and with Punk both doing business and not stirring the locker room into a frenzy, that's good. That's good for pro wrestling. It's good for young guys to be around a Punk. Now, Punk acting like brawl out Punk, no, that's not good. But I think what Dax is saying is like, hey, I'm not trying to upset anyone. I think the Elite and Punk are both good dudes. I want to see us all come together and work together. I like the sentiment behind what Dax is saying. Obviously, you're going to ruffle feathers, but it needs to be said.
Speaking of Dax, him and Cash are taking time off. Their contracts are up in April. Their next contract will probably be their last. They want to build a wrestling school. We know everything going on with Dax because he has the podcast now, as well as opening a coffee shop together in Asheville, North Carolina. Family, money, creativity, respect, personal life, all being weighed going into where they sign next. I'm sure the Saudi Arabia stuff plays into it. Do they want to end their career in WWE? Who knows?
Yeah, the uncertainty of that, I think, is going to play a major part. And he did allude in this quote, he did allude to there's something that he wants creatively. There's something that he would like to do. I honestly think the creative thing he's pushing for is FTR and Punk taking on the Elite. I think that's what everybody wants to see. I think that's the money is there. We'll see if it can come to pass.
We also have Kota Ibushi, who's about to become a free agent. He's had his trials and tribulations with New Japan Pro Wrestling, everything going on there. Kota told Dark Pearsall Flowsian that he had 40 offers, and then he said he would like to do a singles match with Adam Page, as well as be a part of a stable with Adam Page. He called him out specifically. We know where Hangman has a job. I could see Kota having maybe not a full-time contract, but would be one of the one-offs that we've seen in AEW. And we know his relationship with Kenny. Kota Ibushi still has a lot of stuff to give to the business, and I don't think the American audience has seen what he can do. He's one of those guys that's unbelievable what he's been able to do in the ring, and I think he would be a huge star. Obviously, we saw him in the Cruiserweight Classic.
Yep.
He had that on the network, but other than that, it's been sort of an all-in. He was as well in the main event, but other than that, he's been just kind of hidden on the Japanese scene. I would love to see him get his flowers here in America.
Yeah, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion. We see him in some way, shape, or form in AEW. That's always been on the table. It's been teased multiple times by Kenny Omega. I think we're definitely going to see Kota at some point in AEW.
We have Nick and Matt Jackson on a Sports Illustrated article about their post All Out conversations and everything going on with them as a team and as human beings. Great quotes to go on, but the sentiments involved here is that they were pretty vague. They didn't give any specifics about what was going on. They just said about them being good people, that they know that there's always controversy surrounding them. But, Matt and Nick both had a lot of good things to say. So the article's worth checking out. It doesn't reveal any new information, but it is something that reveals that they at least feel some sort of sympathy about what went down.
Yeah, pretty much just saying that there's a story out there that's, aspects of that story have been told and they haven't been able to comment on it because there's no truth in it. So it would be, I think that's just kind of how this story is going to end until we get those tell-alls like decades from now. But hopefully, dude, I'm really in this whole pulling for everyone to work it out camp. So I just hope everyone can do business. That's what wrestling's all about.
So let's go through the results quick from last week. PWG Battle Los Angeles, we were unable to tap into the results. Speedball Mike Bailey won the finals of Bola against Takeshita. He wrestled a staggering 76 minutes and 23 seconds over 4 matches in one day, a coming out party. The winner of Bola usually is a precursor to who's going to be a star in 2023. And Speedball, if you're well known in the wrestling community, you know about Speedball, but I think he's going to be well known in the casuals community as well.
Absolutely. Going back to one of our big 3, that's a guy on Impact's roster. So Watch out for Speedball.
So obviously we talked about Jericho and JAS showing up. They wrestled the tag match in support of Garcia. He was last year's Bola's winner. Don Callis was on hand to scout, and they're filming Takeshita stuff. So we'll see where that goes. Obviously they have huge plans for Takeshita in that big spot. He got put over huge by Bryan Danielson, even in a losing effort.
Takeshita with Don Callis as a mouthpiece. It's exciting.
There was a picture of them at the Kings game the night after Dynamite, and they were like by the merch table, and they're both wearing matching purple Kings jerseys. That was hilarious. It said father and son bonding.
I didn't see that.
It was great. I'll find the photo and post it. So on AEW, 3 main matches. Danielson beat Takeshita, as we mentioned before. Hangman beat Mox in a very solid win. Hangman getting solidified as being
big win.
Big win there. And of course, the Elite won the best of 7 series in the ladder match. Trios titles are theirs now. Rampage, we had the Bloody Women's Tag match. That's the most notable thing. Anna Jay and Ty Conti versus Willow and Ruby. Couple of gnarly things here. That spot that Anna Jay took with the table, ugly as hell. Give the women a lot of credit. This is almost the 1-year anniversary of that other women match that we had with the Bunny on Rampage as well.
Yeah, the Bloody Bunny match was great.
We went through Impact Wrestling, Hard to Kill. So guys, rewind if you want to know about what happened in Hard to Kill. On Raw, Judgment Day earned a shot at the Usos titles. We know they're not winning, but nice little side feud at the Rumble, right?
Yeah, that's fun.
And on SmackDown, Kevin Owens defeated Sami Zayn by DQ. The most notable thing here is Zayn had Owens set up for the hula kick, ready for the win, and the Bloodline attacked. Sami seemed upset. Maybe he's the one that turns on the Bloodline instead of vice versa.
I like the pieces, man. They consistently... a lot of people feel this is plateaued. I do think there's segments of this story that have plateaued, but they find interesting little wrinkles to keep you intrigued. So
I'd go all in and have Sammy win the Rumble. I really would, but I digress. Let's go into Dave's raves. All right. Uncle Dave Meltzer leading the way here. Dropped that newsletter on Monday. A really good read. A lot of the business stuff about the potential sale, but let's stick with match of the week. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega versus Pac and Penta and Ray Phoenix on January 11th from Inglewood, California. That was his match of the week. He gave it 5 stars, and he also went even further, saying this was the best of 7 series and the best version of a best of 7 series in history, and it was significantly better than whatever was number 2. So huge praise from Dave. I agree. I mean, this match was great. I mean, I don't know if I'd have to go back and watch the Booker and Benoit best of 7, but you really think this is going to age really well. I know in the moment people are a little bit sick of seeing it on a week-to-week basis, but I think time will do this really favorably as far as perception goes.
No, I'm with you. The perception of time is going to help this tremendously. I think it is the best of 7. And I love Booker T. Benoit, although I will say this match for me felt rushed. I felt like I would like to have seen at least 5 to 10 more minutes with this. It did feel a bit rushed, but it was a fun match. It didn't take anything away. I just wanted more. But yeah, it's one of the best top 3 best of 7 series ever.
And what says a lot about this person, the performer of the week, Konosuke Takeshita, if you do Control F of the newsletter, I think he was mentioned 72 times.
Wow.
So not just
Dave likes him.
Dave does like him. He's been a big fan since the beginning. And Takeshita is one of those guys that he's someone to watch out for in AEW, but it's not just what's happening in AEW. He got a lot of credit for the match he had with Mike Bailey in the finals to win the tournament. They went 27 minutes and 27 seconds. Dave gave that 4.5 stars. And also Danielson beat Takeshita in 14 minutes and 46 seconds, which also got 4.5 stars. He says, Meltzer being that, Even though I gave this match and Takeshita's match with Mike Bailey and Michael Oku the same number, I'd say Bailey was the best of the three. Oku was second and this was third. Having 3 matches of that caliber plus another with Titus Alexander was nearly at the same level, but didn't get the time in 5 days is something. What was most impressive was the reaction to Takeshita. Even though Danielson had to win to get his title shot against MJF, Takeshita has yet to win a big match in AEW, and the crowd was very pro Takeshita despite being against Bryan Danielson. So huge praise. Rightfully so.
The booking of Takeshita has been so great because, like Dave says, the guy's not winning, and every time out, the crowd reaction is more and more for this guy. We're seeing a true main event underdog being born. And I love Takeshita. Every time he's lined up with someone, I know, like, okay, that's a match worth watching. I love Takeshita.
Same here. And let's get to the week ahead, talk about what you guys can preview for the rest of the week coming up. All right, the week ahead, give you guys some things to look out for. AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, Darby Allin versus Kushida for the TNT Championship. Bryan Danielson in his second match of this run to get to MJF's Iron Man match at Revolution against Bandito, man. Bandito's banged up a little bit, but this could still be an awesome match. I hope he's okay as far as I know he got hurt at the AAA event, but if he's in AEW, I'm sure he's ready to go.
Both of these matches are so good and intriguing, man. Darby and Kushida is going to be fun. That's a matchup I never even had in my mind. And then Danielson, he gets Takeshita, then he gets Bandito. And what that does, that makes me more excited to see who is after these two guys. So I can't wait.
On AEW Rampage, we have one match announced so far. It's going to be Action Andretti versus Daniel Garcia. That's been building for a bit. There's going to be more matches on Rampage, but that's probably going to main event. And there's a lot of story to be told here.
Great match, great story tied into the whole JAS Ricky Starks angle. I love it.
We have Raw and SmackDown this week. There's no matches announced. Raw started about 20 minutes ago, full transparency. But the preview said Bobby Lashley to deliver on the almighty return and what's next for Judgment Day. Classic WWE not announcing any matches. At least they're not
Vince
going
is
back,
baby.
Exactly.
Vince is back.
And then on Friday, we get more Rumble build-up. Nothing really announced yet, but I'm sure there'll be some matches announced. They usually have at least one match announced for SmackDown Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. On Impact, we have the fallout from Hard to Kill, so nothing announced yet, but I'm sure they're going to be setting the tone for the next pay-per-view, getting ready to tell new stories. Who's going to be Josh Alexander's new opponent? What does it mean for Frankie Kazarian? All that stuff. So tune in to Impact.
And I believe if you're a spoiler person, I believe their tapings did occur after Hard to Kill. So the spoilers are out there. I try to stay away from that stuff, but yeah, we will be following up on the fallout of Hard to Kill.
And last but not least, GCW has 2 events this weekend. Don't Talk to Me from Concord, North Carolina, happening on the 20th. Elio Del Vikingo versus Gringo Loco, and Ricky Morton versus Tony Deppen being the most prominent matches that Don't Talk to Me. Followed up on the next night from Huntsville, Alabama, the GCW World Tag Team Championship. Los Macizos versus the East-West Express. Nick Wayne and Jordan Oliver finally getting their opportunity at the tag titles. Take a Picture is the event. So 2 good match GCW. If you have a subscription to Fight TV, why not, man? Tune into some good wrestling. They're going to definitely blow you away.
That Vikingo Gringo Loco match, I've got that in my sights. That's going to be a barn burner. Go back in the archives on our Visits the Tavern playlist. We talked to Gringo Loco. Great guy, crushing it. And obviously Vikingo's one of the best in the game right now.
That's all I got for you, man. That's the news. We ran through it quick, 5 minutes over time, but I think we give you guys more than you can chew on just until next week. I think we're going to be giving you guys some more information. Hopefully not so much Vince story. Let's go with something different.
Yeah, unless something just blows the top off, we're going to try and move away because I have this feeling we're going to be tracking that story a lot. So hopefully we get some good topics to dig into for next Monday. Again, guys, every Monday, 7 p.m. Wrestling Tonight. We'll be live here with you guys. If you can't sit down and watch the stream, rejoice. Tuesday mornings, Turnbuckle Tavern, Apple, and Spotify. The audio will be available. If you guys aren't subscribed to our Apple and Spotify, please do so. Please subscribe. Click the bell in YouTube. Stay up to date. We've got a lot of exciting shows, a lot of things. Pretty much every day of the week, there's something, and we appreciate any support you guys give us.
Yeah, guys, just check out the rest of the week of the Tavern. We got a lot of good things coming our way. The flagship happening on Thursday. Raw Down's coming back with who knows what's going on in the WWE landscape. Shot Nostalgia, we're wrapping up ECW. This is the second to last episode. We're covering November to Remember. A lot of ground to cover. Steve Austin versus Mikey Whipwreck for the ECW title. We got New Jack being fired because he's fighting Dudley Dudley. We got the fire with Terry Funk that he lit the first row on fire. People got injured and hospitalized. The Philadelphia Athletic Commission wants them done. So much to break down, man. I can't wait to have Bellcaster back. Thank you guys for the supporting me and being a part of me being by myself. It's hard to be a one-man show for Shot Nostalgia last week, but I thought we did a good job covering pretty much 6 months of content from July until almost October. And for the people in the chat, for the people that messaged me that enjoyed the episode, thank you guys for watching.
Yeah, you crushed it. It's hard to go solo on any show. Glad to have Mike back so you guys can finish season 2 strong, because teaser season 3 is going to be a barn burner. WWF 1998. You guys know what went down that year, and these two guys are going to break it all down. What's more exciting than that? Yeah. Also, throw some love to Fig Night on Tuesdays. Throw some love to Long Balls. Those guys are crushing it. But what do you think, Ace? You want to get out of here?
Let's get out of here. You guys can enjoy the rest of Monday. Go watch Raw. Maybe tune in. Go to the bathroom. Whatever you guys. We'll tell you what happens on Raw. You don't have to watch it, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
We'll be here next week to keep you guys abreast with everything happening. Give us some love in the comments. Until next week, we're going to keep it snug and stiff here like we always do. Come back next week and hit the ropes with us. Again, for Ace, I'm Chad. This has been Wrestling Tonight.